Welcome everyone, I'm Yashni Padiachi and this is Africa Matters. Mali's military government wants the United Nations peacekeepers to leave the country as soon as possible. Will the UN Security Council renew their mandate that's set to end on Thursday, the 29th of June? And what does this mean for the country? We'll also be telling you how power cuts in the world's second largest exporter of fresh citrus fruits, South Africa, could be affecting your meals at home. We'll also be traveling to Ghana, where the beautiful game is helping kick out the stigma faced by people living with cerebral palsy. The government in Mali has called for the immediate withdrawal of UN peacekeepers known locally as MINUSMA. It's accusing the mission of making community tensions worse and failing to address security challenges effectively. The junta also accused MINUSMA members of espionage following a report that implicated Malian troops and their allies in the killing of more than 500 people in the Mopti region of central Mali in March last year. Let's look at how events have evolved to this point. Mali has been fighting a complex and protracted insurgency since 2012. It began with clashes between the government and northern separatist groups seeking greater autonomy. Insecurity has since spread with the growth of terror groups along Mali's borders. Growing insecurity led to two coups in quick succession in 2020 and 2021. Mali's military leaders joined forces with Russian military contractors known as the Wagner Group to boost its military capabilities. The junta also cut ties with France, its former colonial ruler, leading it to withdraw its military forces and end its counter-terrorism operations early this year. Several European nations withdrew their troops from the country and suspended the EU training mission. The 13,000-strong UN peacekeeping mission has been in the country for 10 years. Its mandate includes assisting in Mali's political transition, delivery of humanitarian aid, protecting civilians, and promoting human rights. Its report, saying hundreds of people were massacred last year by Malian troops and their allies, prompted the government's reaction.
Unfortunately, MINUSMA seems to have become a part of the problem in fueling inter-community tensions, exacerbated by allegations of extreme gravity, which are extremely harmful to peace, reconciliation, and to national cohesion. The situation is begetting mistrust among the Malian population and also causing a crisis of confidence between Malian authorities and MINUSMA. In light of all of the above, the Malian government asks for the withdrawal without delay of MINUSMA. However, the government does stand ready to cooperate with the United Nations.
Well, as you know, the mission is mandated by the Council, and the Security Council is in the midst of negotiations on the matter. The mandate is coming to an end on the 29th of June. And of course, we stand to be guided by whatever decision the Council may take, but clearly, peacekeeping operations operate on the basis of consent from the host country, and absent that consent, operating in a specific country would be extremely challenging, if not impossible.
The future of the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali now lies in the hands of the Security Council members, who must adopt a resolution to extend the mandate for MINUSMA by June the 30th. A resolution requires at least 9 votes in favor and no vetoes by Russia, China, the US, Britain or France in order to pass. Well, let's hear more from Alexis Akwajiram. He's an editor at Semaphore Africa and specializes in current affairs related to Africa and its diaspora. He joins me now from London. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Matters. Now, do you think that the UN mandate is likely to be renewed, and what does that mean for the mission there?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, at this stage, the UN are in a really uncomfortable position. I think a lot of this comes down to what you pointed out, which is the right to veto. Now, bearing in mind that Russia is one of those members that has the right to veto, that could be something which creates a bottleneck and means that we don't have a renewal. But at this stage, as I say, it's hard to tell what will happen. Either way, this mission has become increasingly problematic for the UN over the last decade. And clearly, the situation is one in which they're not necessarily welcome. And a lot of this has come about because of populist rhetoric by the ruling junta, who have made it clear that foreign powers are not welcome. whereas Russia and the Wagner Group specifically have been welcome. And the reason why I say that Russia might play a pivotal role here is because, well, Wagner Group is a paramilitary entity that is linked to the Kremlin. So it might play into Russia's hands to just say, look, let's move on from this and let's use our power veto. Because ultimately what we've been seeing is a playing out of geopolitical tensions between France and Russia, France being the former colonial powers in Mali. And bit by bit, they've been pushed out and they've left of their own accord, as you pointed out in your intro. And MINUSMA are seen as part of these foreign entities, these foreign powers, whereas the Russians have been welcomed.
So then, Alexis, do you think Mali is the scene of a proxy war that's playing out between Russia and the West, since the junta has now aligned themselves with the Wagner Group?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I think we really are seeing a proxy war play out. In recent months, Emmanuel Macron has made it clear that he's frustrated with the way in which Russia has bit by bit exerted influence in former French colonies. And these are places where France had exerted not only soft power, but also they had a military presence. And bit by bit, France has rowed back from that. And we are increasingly seeing a recalibration in terms of world powers and the world order when it comes to African geopolitics. We are definitely seeing Russia playing out in this proxy war and finding ways to exert influence. And it's also worth bearing in mind that this is about far more than Mali specifically. This insurgency, this situation in the Sahel has spread over into Burkina Faso and also into Niger. And again, in those countries, we've seen a pushback against France and a swing towards Russia. We've also seen that in Central African Republic. So I think the way you described it is spot on. We're definitely seeing a proxy war play out here between France and Russia. And at the moment, it appears that Russia has the upper hand.
Russia may have the upper hand, and they want MINUSMA out. Mali's calling for that to happen. But also you mentioned there that there are problems in MINUSMA, and there have been calls to reform this group for some time now. Is this just a matter of restructuring how they operate?
I mean, I think this is probably something more fundamental than that. They could restructure, but that would be tinkering around the edges. I mean, ultimately, first of all, in Mali specifically, there's clearly a tension between what the purpose of this force is. Now, in terms of the authorities in Mali, what they're looking for is they want to tackle the insurgency. It's a long-standing insurgency where militants are allied to Islamic State and also Al-Qaeda. On the other hand, the UN has been clear that their mission is to be peacekeepers and to defend civilians and not to be on the front foot. So there, in and of itself, you have this tension, this sense that they're working at cross purposes. So that's why I say that simply recalibrating, restructuring wouldn't be enough. And then there is just a deeper issue about how effective missions like this by the UN actually are. And I think there are deeper, more meaningful questions around that. And I think it's not, I think the UN isn't necessarily clear themselves in terms of just how dynamic they can be and how far they want to go.
Where does this leave now the people of Mali, especially the civilians? Can their own government provide them with the security that they desperately need without the support from the UN?
I think it leaves the people of Mali in a very precarious and dangerous situation, specifically the people of northern and central Mali, to be specific. The reality is that MINUSMA, that was a force of some 13,000 troops. And in terms of numbers, Bamako has about 1,000 from Wagner Group. And then they have their own force, which is limited in terms of training and in terms of how effective it can be. So in terms of the numbers and in terms of the training and sense of responsibility, mission and accountability, I think we're likely to see far more instances, or in terms of the atrocities that were allegedly carried out by Malian forces and also the Wagner Group. I mean, put simply, they don't necessarily discern or distinguish between civilians and insurgents. And as well as that, they're simply not as well trained and they don't have the numbers. So I think whereas it taps into a popular sentiment about pushing back against outside forces and maybe cleaving closer to the Russians. In a practical sense, I think this would leave Malian civilians horribly exposed. And it just means that really they have fewer people and a less well-trained force to protect them against the insurgents. As well as that, who's going to provide the humanitarian assistance? Because put simply, the Malian authorities don't have the infrastructure in place to do that.
And as always, it's the people on the ground who are going to be affected the most. Alexis Akwagiram, really appreciate your insight and analysis. Speaking to us there from London, thank you again so much. Well, we have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including...
I'm Diane Hawker, and I'll be explaining how South Africa's electricity crisis is affecting farming and agri-processing plants like this one, and what South African farmers are doing about it.
I am Isaac Kaleji in Accra. I'll tell you what a local football club for players with cerebral palsy is doing to give hope to young people in deprived settlements.
Farmers in South Africa's Limpopo region are spending millions of dollars on diesel trying to keep production levels high. This is a result of the country's ongoing power crisis. As winter sets in, indications are the power crisis could escalate. For major fruit exporters, this means a threat to their jobs and livelihoods, as Diane Hawker reports.
One might think that it only takes sunshine to get this citrus ready for market. While South Africa's Limpopo province does have an abundance of natural light, farmers here are struggling to get a regular supply of one key power source, electricity. Piet Engelbrecht's family has been farming in this region for 8 decades. Now the country's energy crisis poses a threat to his survival.
No, it will be more disastrous and more. We have to get more generators running and for longer periods. And it's going to be much more cost, and yeah, the effect of the cost is at the end it's you have to cut somewhere because the operation have to run, and yes, it's just adding up.
Getting the fruit watered and harvested is just part of the problem. The farm also packages its own produce before exporting it to Western and Eastern Europe, Canada and the Middle East. Almost 2,000 staff are employed here during peak season, and Engelbrecht has had to spend millions on backup generators and diesel to keep the plant going.
As you mentioned, the packaging is also running on electricity, and that's quite it uses a lot of electricity, and so you can't you must be able to pack in business hours, because that is a time when people come to work, and so we have to use backup generators, and which run at a very large cost.
South Africa's agricultural sector is a major local employer, accounting for more than 5% of local jobs. The sector has also been at the forefront of the country's economic recovery since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. The agricultural sector also plays a significant role in African and global food security, since South Africa exports more than 50% of its produce. But the farming sector has recently taken a downturn as a result of load shedding, an ongoing period of widespread national blackouts of electricity supply. With load shedding threatening to undo years of progress, South African farmers are not giving up without a fight. They're requesting government's assistance to install generators and solar panels on their farms to ensure that their produce can make it from fields to markets across the world. Diane Hawker, Africa Matters, Limpopo.
To Cameroon now, which currently faces a huge problem when it comes to finding missing people and personal documents. But an undergraduate student in the southwestern city of Buea has created a mobile application to address these challenges. And as Paul Nje reports, the innovation has been greeted with praise.
In Cameroonian cities, towns and villages, news of people going missing isn't rare. But a young computer engineering student from the University of Buea is ready to change the status quo. 27-year-old Ulrich Geofak is on a campaign to promote his mobile application called Ajoza which is meant to help increase the chances of people finding not only their missing loved ones, but their documents too.
The number of missing people was always increasing, and that's increased up to a level that we cannot handle it again. And many families are crying every day. Many people are losing also their documents, and the way to get back to those documents are almost impossible nowadays. So now with the Adesewa app, they can quickly get back to the family members, they can quickly get their documents, they can quickly find their loved ones.
Users of the platform can register their entire families, and in case they or their personal documents get lost, the information provided can be used to trace them anywhere in the country and handed in to the police. Ulrich and his team of volunteers have managed to convince some students to download and use the application.
I tried to download it because there are some of my apps, some of my certificates are missing right now. For example, my ID card is missing. So I found it as an opportunity to alert everyone that my ID card is missing. And with that, I'm sure that I'll easily recover it back.
The app developer addresses privacy concerns by agreeing not to share users' data with third parties. The International Committee of the Red Cross says Cameroon is among 7 African countries that make up 82% of people who are registered as missing. In 2020 alone, the organization had more than 1,500 open cases of missing people in the country.
Technology has come to improve on the way we do things and to make life a lot easier. It has come to improve and make things a lot easier because before maybe someone gets missing, you don't even know where to start. But then if there's a platform where we know that, okay, all these TV stations, all these radio stations, and others who have information on missing people are interconnected, it becomes a lot easier to identify missing persons.
The city of Buea is considered a bustling tech hub in southwestern Cameroon. And innovations like the Adesewa app show how domestically developed solutions can be used to address pressing national and international problems. Cameroon, it seems, is gradually making its way up the rungs of Africa's tech ladder. Paul Njie, Africa Matters, Buea, Cameroon.
Cerebral palsy is a lifelong condition that affects movement, speech, and coordination. It's caused by a brain injury or abnormality that develops before, during, or soon after birth. In Ghana, activists are helping people with CP participate in sports and even play football as a form of therapy. Isaac Khaledzi has their story from the capital, Accra.
Sayuti Al-Hassan lives with cerebral palsy. The condition affects his left arm and leg, making movement difficult for him. At his home in Nima, Ghana's biggest slum, he paints to keep active. He's determined not to be a burden to his family.
If my colleagues, they want to go somewhere, I feel like joining them because of I've been facing the challenges. It's paining me, but one of my doctor advised me, said, if I sit at one place, it will affect me. I should be doing action.
Over a year ago, Al-Hassan met Emmanuel Akpabli, a social activist supporting people with disabilities to thrive in the community. He encourages people with cerebral palsy to engage in sports. He says it's his way of helping to tackle the stigma that comes with living with the condition.
When we impose the stigma on them, it makes them feel unusual. But we always advise them, when we have the opportunity to talk on media, we tell them, if you have said children, bring them out. We also have a way of bringing them to the public, making them feel human.
Al-Hassan and some of his friends are part of Akpabli's football club, and they train often. It's an opportunity to get vital exercise. Akpabli hopes to recruit more people and eventually play competitive games abroad.
I've started lobbying in most of the clubs in Europe, UK base, so on and so forth, so that we'll do what we call player transfer. And then if some of the clubs internationally are interested in most of these local players, we can sell them out.
For many children with cerebral palsy, it can mean an exclusion from a lot of activities, especially when it comes to sports. But here on this page, some of them are getting a second chance to come alive, which can be life-changing.
1 in every 300 babies in Ghana is born with cerebral palsy, and about 22,000 children are estimated to live with the condition. For parents, providing the special care required is time-consuming and financially draining. Activists like Hannah Awaji, who also has a child with CP, say any form of social activity to people with the condition is helpful.
Movement is part of therapy. So a child with cerebral palsy, first of all, the part of the brain that is supposed to help move is not active. And one of the ways we could correct or rehabilitate them is to get that part to be moved. So for instance, getting my child to sit is a form of movement and is therapy. So if children, some of them are able to move and there are activities that gets them to be involved in sporting activities, it is excellent.
Al-Hassan has found hope on the football field, and with the support of family and friends, he plans to live a full and normal life. Isaac Kalaji, Africa Matters, Accra, Ghana.
Millions of Muslims mark the holiday of Eid al-Adha by carrying out the traditional practice of slaughtering a beast. But this year, some in Senegal may not be able to get their hands on livestock. Yunus Emre reports on how cattle and sheep herders are reluctant to make their usual journey to the capital, fearing they won't be safe.
Eid al-Adha is a lively and busy time for Muslims around the world. And for sheep breeders and herders, the holiday brings a short and sharp high season. Many travel long distances to populous cities like Dakar to sell their livestock, which are purchased and slaughtered as part of the holiday celebrations. But recent bouts of violence surrounding political protests have left herders like Omar de Omal feeling skittish.
We've seen these videos on the internet of bandits going to Keur Masar and Rufisque to try and steal sheep. How can you keep an eye on 100 sheep and have to deal with thieves, or take your family out to fight machete-wielding thieves? That's what we're afraid of.
Omar says only 20% of his colleagues are planning to go to Dakar this year. But staying and going both have their risks.
The risk of us staying here in Dara is that some people may go to Toba instead of coming all the way here to buy from us. But peace is priceless. And to go to Dakar in search of money only to end up killing each other to save your cattle is not worth it.
The herders know their safety is the most important thing, but staying put will cost them their biggest bulk sales all year. If they can't sell the animals, they must keep feeding them, further compounding the cost of the lost sales.
We need cereal-rich feed, so every day we gather them here without going to Dakar is a loss for us. The sheep eat a lot, and a bag of feed costs 12,000 West African francs.
Still, the herders are reluctant. They're waiting for the government to intervene.
I have 3 trucks waiting to be loaded. I have around 400 sheep, and each truck can load up to 150 sheep. If the Minister of Interior had said that everything was secure, we'd all be coming to Dakar. Without security, we don't plan to go to Dakar. We have enough livestock, but we fear for security.
A spokesman for Senegal's Interior Ministry has said that the government won't provide any additional security, insisting peace has been restored and businesses are resuming. However, the herders aren't convinced, and many Senegalese Muslims could face a lean Eid. Yunus Emre, Africa Matters.
This week, we explore Oraniamund, a small mining town situated in the Karas region of extreme southwestern Namibia. The city was built on the world-famous diamond area along the shore of the Atlantic Ocean, where few people have been allowed to go to. Here's a closer look. That's our show this week, but do kindly share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories on this episode or ideas on what you'd like us to cover. On Twitter, use the hashtag Africa Matters. You can also watch this episode on YouTube. Just search for Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment and share. Until the next time, take care. Goodbye.